Good morning. I'm Ward 1 Councilmember Brianne Nadeau, the Chair of the Committee on Public Works and Operations. Today is Friday, April 24th, 2026, and I'm calling to order this meeting of the committee in room 123 of the John A. Wilson Building, as well as over the Zoom platform. The time is 9:43 a.m. All right. The topic of today's hearing is the mayor's proposed fiscal year 2027 budget for the Department of For-Hire Vehicles and the Office of Contracts and Procurement. The first agency on today's agenda is the Department of For-Hire Vehicles. Compared to the current fiscal year, the mayor proposed budget for DFHV sees a reduction of over $6 million in the agency's total operating budget. It's curious that the narrative in the mayor's budget does not indicate what agency programs this budget reduction is tied to. I suspect this can be explained by the elimination of the DC School Connect pilot program. School Connect has been operated by DFHV since the agency first received an infusion of federal ARPA funds from the mayor, and over the past 3 years, this committee has sought to ensure that the School Connect program was both achieving its intended goal of ensuring student safety while not negatively impacting DFHV's core consumer protection and traffic safety functions. I'll be interested in hearing from Director Rogers and his team what the plans are for the wind down of the School Connect and how the lessons learned from this pilot can be applied to improve services for students in the district. I also want to ensure that DFHV has sufficient funding for critical new initiatives, including expanding access to wheelchair accessible vehicles and the implementation of carrier for hire regulations to ensure a fair and safe market for food and parcel delivery. The second agency on the agenda is the Office of Contracting and Procurement. The mission of OCP is to obtain quality goods and services through a streamlined procurement process that is transparent and responsive to the needs of government agencies and the public. OCP bears an enormous task. It provides contracting and procurement services to 79 district agencies. It's also tasked with ensuring that all procurements are conducted fairly and impartially. OCP core services include the DC Supply Schedule, Purchase Card Program, the Surplus Property Disposition, and Reutilization Program, as well as the learning and certification programs, which support ongoing development of staff proficiency and procurement service quality. The mayor's proposed FY27 operating budget for OCP is $26,653,738 and 198 full-time equivalents. This represents a 9.5% decrease in operating funds and a decrease of 7 FTEs. The agency's proposed capital budget for FY27 is $7.9 million, a 17.9% increase from FY26 levels of $6.7 million. We will explore more of the agency's budget enhancements and cuts later in this hearing, including the decrease in FTEs, any potential impacts of the decrease in operating funds, and the increase in capital funding and related projects. I look forward to hearing from our public government and government witnesses today about OCP. Okay, some logistics, and I will note that we have very few of the people who have signed up to testify here in the room or on the Zoom, so this will either go quickly or we're going to end up inserting witnesses throughout the hearing today, which is not my preference, but we'll do our best to make sure everybody is heard. In addition to being in person in Zoom, this hearing is being live broadcast on YouTube at DC Council Public Works. Witnesses testifying on behalf of an organization will have 5 minutes to provide oral testimony, and all other witnesses will have 3 minutes. In order to ensure we hear from all members of the public, I ask all witnesses to stick to their allotted time. If you are testifying in person, when I call your name, please come seat yourself at the witness table. If you are testifying online, when I call your name, you will receive an invitation to be promoted to the panel. Please accept that invitation so that you may control your camera and your microphone and that we may hear your testimony. All right. We are going to now turn to our public witnesses. Talib Kareem Mohammed, Executive Director, DC Muslim Chamber of Commerce. Heidi Case, co-founder, DMV Disability Senior Community Meeting. Tekle Tewolde. Jeremiah Lowry, Coalition for Nonprofit Equity. Iris Jacob, Coalition for Nonprofit Equity. And Robert Warren. Hiding in the back. All right, we will begin with Mr. Tewolde. When you're ready to start, push the button on the microphone so that it lights up red. I would say the one by your left hand is probably going to pick you up by your left hand, straight there. Yep. And then just till it's red, push it. There you go. And pull it a little closer to you. Just be sure we can hear you. Very good.
Hear me now?
I can. When you're ready, you may begin.
My name is Tekle Tewolde. I live in Washington, D.C. in Catholic University area, Ward 5, I believe. And I'm also a taxi driver. I've been driving taxi for over 20 years. And I have a few things that I would like to testify here for. One is the color scheme that we have right now. And I will add one more thing, which is the council members giving the autonomy to the director in certain things like gas surcharges, small things. So he wouldn't have to come here, uh, get approval. And by the time he does that, everything is passed by. So those things. But the first thing is the color scheme for me. Um, we have two different colors that we have to paint our cars. And we've been trying to be competitive with all the other share rights. And all the other share rights are not really regulated, and we are regulated to death with color scheme, with the, uh, we get inspected by the taxi cab inspectors every month or whenever they see us and all those things. But having said that, we try to buy new cars and use those new cars to do the taxi driving. And then when we buy them, we have to paint them and spend from $1,100 to $2,000. I have actually sent some of the receipts to the director, and it also it puts us in a position where we have to spend so much money to paint the car. And once we paint the car, the car value goes down tremendously. So we can't even if we stop, we can't even sell the car. It's valueless. And I'm trying to ask the councils to pass to eliminate the color scheme. And a taxi driver can go to the dealer, buy a car, put all the signs that he needs to put, and put the dome light, and start driving. And all he has to do is pass an inspection and maintain the car safety. And if we do that and we become more competitive, it's like you're tying our hands and you're asking us to be competitive with the other industries that are not tied their hands with. And all other jurisdictions have already eliminated the color scheme. And I don't see why DC is the only one who has the. People don't really care about the color; they only care about the dome light. They see the dome light, they see if it's vacant or for hired, and then they take the taxi. They really don't care. They want the ride. And most of the customers that we have, they do appreciate us. Although the other share rights are trying to eliminate the taxis, we're here. We're staying. We're not going anywhere because the customers need us. And you can ask your constituents. They do appreciate us because we know this is DC. We are DC, Washington, DC ambassadors. We are. The others are from everywhere. They don't really know what DC is. We know what DC is. We are the ambassador. So you guys need to take care of us. So you, instead of tying our hand, let our hand go and let's be competitive with the others. Let's rise. So I asked the council members to pass this as soon as they can, and so we can go on and buy cars and just uh, you know turn them into a taxi, and then the colors will be phasing out whatever colors that they have. When they change the car, they don't have to paint the car. They don't have to go through all those expenses they have to go. And also, like I said, if you give the director small autonomy, I'm not saying just let him be. I'm saying there are certain things that he needs to decide by himself right away. Like for example, the gas we're paying right now is like we used to pay 369, now we're paying 419. And then we still haven't gotten the gas surcharge. And doesn't make sense because he has to go through the mayor, the council, the attorney general before he can apply it. Those type of small things, if you give him an autonomy, maybe we will be able to you know uh, work. He could work with us. I'm
Perfect.
really appreciate him because he works with us.
So I'm going to have you stop there and then I'm going to come back to you for questions after everybody's testified. So stay where you are.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you so much. Right. Um, which of you would like to go first? Cute. They did rock, paper, scissors. Get your button though on the microphone.
Okay, good morning. Good morning. My phone is being silly. Okay. Good morning, Chairperson Nadeau and members of the committee. My name is Iris Jacob, and I'm the director of the Coalition for Nonprofit Equity. I work in DC, and I'm testifying today in support of funding the Nonprofit Services Preservation Amendment Act of 2025. Been here before. I'm happy to be here again. I've seen firsthand how nonprofits are often doing the work that government and other systems are not doing well enough. They help people stay housed, feed their families, navigate healthcare, support young people, provide legal aid, and show up when residents are in crisis. In my community, nonprofits are often the ones keeping the lights on when everything else feels unstable. Even though nonprofits provide essential services across DC, many are not funded to cover the true cost of their work. When organizations are underpaid or reimbursed late, it leads to staff burnout, layoffs, and real instability for the people who rely on those services. That means residents can lose access to food, support, housing help, youth programs, advocacy, and other basic lifelines. I understand that this is a tight budget year for the district. However, that makes it even more important to invest in the systems that keep people safe and supported. If we do not act now, the result will be deeper service gaps, more strain on staff, and higher costs down the line. Passing and funding this bill is not just about fairness to nonprofits, it's about protecting the residents who depend on them every day. According to the Council's Office of Racial Equity, improving how nonprofits are funded and paid can help meaningful, positive impact on racial equity in DC. That matters because nonprofits in this city are often the organizations Black residents rely on for housing support, food access, youth programs, healthcare navigation, violence prevention, and legal help. Black households are more likely to face lower incomes, higher unemployment, and deeper barriers to stability, which means they are often the people most harmed when nonprofit services are delayed, reduced, or shut down. Supporting nonprofits is not abstract. It helps protect the institutions that Black DC residents turn to every day, and it helps sustain the Black women and other people of color who make up much of the nonprofit workforce and leadership in this city. Fair funding is an investment in equity and stability and in the communities most impacted by racial inequality. I urge the council to fund at minimum key provisions of the Nonprofit Preservation Amendment Act of 2025, advance the bill through the whole committee, and ensure strong oversight of the contracting process so nonprofits are paid fairly and on time. Even partial funding this year will help move the district toward a more stable and equitable system. And then I wanted to add lastly that Appleseed has done some really great work on looking into the holding Care First particularly accountable to the city. And it would be great if DSB, which is not this hearing, but if DSB was also doing the same because there's a lot of money owed to nonprofits in this city. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Lowry?
Awesome. What she said, done. I'm good. I gotta say a few words. Thank you, uh, Chairperson Nadeau, for allowing me to testify this morning. My name is Jeremiah Lowry. I am a Washington, D.C. resident and advocate and work closely with organizations and coalitions here in the district. Like my colleague said, I urge the council to fund at minimum key provisions of the Nonprofit Services Preservation Amendment Act of 2025 and to continue to strengthen oversight of the Office of Contracting and Procurement. Through my work with nonprofits across DC, I've seen how deeply these organizations are embedded in the fabric of our communities. As you know, council member, they provide a lot of essential services from youth programming, housing support, food access, often serving residents who will otherwise fall through the cracks. A lot of these nonprofits have been amazing partners for the district government, ensuring that services are met for DC residents. Despite this, as you know, nonprofits are facing a lot of operating under contracts that do not cover their true costs of delivering services, delayed payments, unclear contracting processes, and restrictions on covering indirect costs. which is creating a lot of financial strain, not just in DC, but across the region. This is not sustainable, and more importantly, it's not equitable. I definitely want to acknowledge that, DC is facing a tight budget. It's a tight budget season. We can't read a newspaper without seeing that these days. It's tight budget season. I get it. Understand that, there's a lot of difficult decisions before you and your colleagues on the council. But, we still strongly believe it's important to invest fully or in part in reforms that bring stability to the nonprofit sector. Without these changes, we risk greater service disruptions, higher long-term costs, deeper inequalities, and higher unemployment in the region. As you know, the Nonprofit Service Preservation Amendment Act is a practical and necessary path forward. One more point, importantly, this is also a racial equity issue, as we saw from the Council's Office of Racial Equity, that has recognized that improving nonprofit contracting can have a meaningful positive impact on racial equity in the district. Woohoo. So, shout out to them. They did the work and they showed it's a racial equity issue. And for these reasons, I respectfully urge you in the council to advance this piece of legislation. Thanks to your leadership so far on this. This has been amazing. Bring it to a vote and fund at minimum key provisions this fiscal year. Let's see what we can fund to get this thing off the ground. As noted, it's a tough budget season, but nonprofits are doing such amazing work throughout the district, and we need to make sure we have their back as well. Even partial funding will, move us in the right direction and signal a commitment to strengthening the systems that so many residents rely on. With that said, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for your testimony. Before I turn to questions, I'm just going to triple check that we do not have any more public witnesses in the room who would like to testify. I don't see anybody signed up in the Zoom, but I will ask people who are in the Zoom, if you did wish to testify, if you could raise your hand virtually now, I will give you the chance to do so. Is that a second? Okay. I think it's mostly building staff in there. So, okay. We'll start with some questions about the Nonprofit Fairness Bill. So thank you both for your testimony and for your organization's advocacy. As you know, I've advocated alongside the coalition for years, and I'm so pleased that we're progressing and are planning to hold a markup for the Nonprofit Services Preservation Amendment Act this month. So we plan to see it through to the end. What key provisions of the bill do you think could or should be funded first or prioritized? Thought we were going to see another epic game.
We were going to do, I feel like it should be in this time. We are, as a coalition, coming together and talking about that. We actually have plans to talk with your office specifically about those things. We had talked about before wanting to make sure that there was a 15% minimum, like that's what it was across the board.
Yeah.
And then that would, there would be work put in particularly on making sure that every office was doing that. Right now, that's not, groups aren't necessarily held to task in the same way across the board. So making sure that every office is doing 15% would be probably it. But we also, have thoughts to go through it more thoroughly with your office.
Makes
And
sense.
yes, and thank you also for all the support.
Yeah. It's always good to work with partners who have a clear goal. Yeah. Okay. Super helpful. We finally have the fiscal impact statement, and we can share that with you. It is big, but that was, of course, the main hurdle to marking it up 2 weeks ago when we had scheduled the markup, and the AFO had not produced the fiscal impact statement, which was disappointing because we could have voted on it Tuesday, as in the committee of the whole. Okay. Anyway, we'll be happy to set up that meeting and figure out what could be funded first. So thank you. All right. Now, Mr. Tewolde back in the hot seat. Okay. So I did have the chance to talk with director about this in his performance oversight hearing. And one of the things that we discussed was not only the cost to the driver, but also the environmental impact of sanding down the paint and painting it again. And also the way the technology has advanced. So now if you want to put the dome on, is it mostly magnetic? Is that right? Yeah. And feel free to turn your mic on. I definitely want to hear what you have to say. So if you didn't have to paint the car any particular color, that would be another entry point for drivers into the market, right? They could just, yeah. Okay. Which I think would be good, because one of the things we want to do is have more taxi drivers.
Exactly.
Because the more you have, the more reliable using a taxi is, the more people use it, the more we get people off the really expensive
Right.
app-based. Yeah.
Well, one of the deterrent things to come into a taxi cab industry is the paint.
Yeah.
Because once they paint the car and they can't go back and do something else with the car. And the other thing is, for example, yesterday I have a customer who had 3 times canceled his Uber ride, and then I was just driving down, and he hailed me, and he went in and he said, "I used to go down and get a cab anytime,
Right.
but I can't anymore, and then I have to rely on Uber." We have fixed price,
Yeah.
so our price will probably go up $1 or $2 maximum because of the traffic or so. But Uber is not regulated with the price. So they can go 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. And when it comes to traffic, when it comes to being in a gridlock, we have a way of going around it. And then Uber, we were discussing about that yesterday. So we have more reach toward your constituents than anybody else, because we service everybody. And they tell us that they miss taxi. And one of the deterrent part of coming back to the taxi is the paint. And the more taxi there is, and if there are, and we used to have like 10,000 taxi cabs in DC, and then anytime you go out, you could get a taxi. Right now, we have like 1,300 taxis. Think about it, from 10,000 to 1,300. How many of them have been?
Yeah.
So, but the population has increased. It didn't decrease in DC.
Yeah. And is the average age of the driver also kind of, more retirement age for taxi drivers, or do you think it's younger folks getting into the market?
Well, there are some younger folks getting to the market, but the thing is, I also would like the director to, if the color scheme passes and
Yeah.
more drivers come in, I wouldn't mind if the director makes those drivers who come new know the city much more better
Yeah.
than we have the highest accident rate on the share rides. Share rides have the highest accident rate because they don't know how to, they're not accustomed to the city.
Yeah.
So the department is responsible for those drivers to know the city, and then they don't have to be oblivious about where they're going and where they're making the turn. We know which one is one-way street, which one is not one-way street, which one is, blocked off, which one is not blocked off. We know that. So if you know that, then the taxi industry grows, and your constituents become happy because they want the taxi to come back. But how are we going to come back if we are hands tied up with regulation and the others are not? You have to untie our hands.
Does the community of taxi drivers know each other? Do you consider yourselves colleagues?
Yes, we
Yeah.
do. And then, like I said, when I don't remember if you remember, I don't know if you remember Vince Gray.
Yeah.
Okay. When Vince Gray ran for mayor, nobody really believed Vince Gray was going to win because he was running against Fenty.
Yeah.
Fenty was a bit famous then. The taxi driver, I was the one who organized all the taxi drivers, and we organized it, and then we pushed it. And then we, like I said a while ago, at that time, the taxis were like 8,000, 9,000 taxis. And we had the direct, communication with the constituents, and we were passing out all those things. And then he got elected.
Yep.
So, like I said, we are the ambassador of the city because all the Uber drivers come from Maryland, from Virginia, or elsewhere. But we are the ambassador of the city. So, we can, support or help the city, by being more and helping all the, the DC residences with the transportation.
And I have your petition, so thank you for that. And thank you for taking the lead on that. I want to ask a clarifying question.
Okay.
So is the request that you should be able to have any color that your car is, or that it should just be one instead of two paint colors?
Any color.
Any color.
Because I should go to a dealer
Yeah.
and like a car, buy it. And there are signs, company signs, phone
Yeah.
number,
And then
taxi
that can
number,
be your-
dome light.
Yeah.
I put that, go to inspection, pass inspection, and move on. But you also have to think about what I just said about the autonomy.
Yeah.
You
Yes,
know, you
let's
have
talk
to-
about that.
yeah.
Okay. So what other regulations do you think are a barrier compared to the rideshare companies?
For example, if we can develop our own, apps,
Mhm.
it's a barrier now because we have to go through.
Do you use Curb?
I use Curb.
Yeah.
But I'm saying Curb is, one of them. But the Curb in New York and elsewhere is not connected to Curb here.
Mm.
So people come and you say, do you use Curb? Yes, but they cannot help us with their own Curb.
They have to download a different
They
Curb?
have to, I don't know how it works.
Oh, I'm gonna try that.
Explain it to you.
Okay.
But
I
if-
took the subway when I was in New York
Yeah.
last, so I don't know, but okay. I'll
But
have to
if we
check it
could
out.
develop our own apps and distribute it, we can reach people and then distribute our app for them to download it. And then you see what the industry of the share ride brought is availability,
Yeah.
and it brought the rights to their house. They don't have to go out and hail a taxi, and they look at in the app, and then as soon as it gets to the house, they come out and they ride.
Yeah.
So they're accustomed to that now.
Yeah.
So if we can provide that without hurdles,
Yeah.
then we can move forward.
So you mentioned the gas surcharge. So
Yes.
uh, right now, the agency doesn't have the autonomy to say, there's a gas
Doesn't happen.
emergency. We
Yeah.
need to increase the surcharge. Okay.
I have been speaking to director for like 3 weeks. 3 weeks about the gas surcharge, and he's been going through the mayor, the attorney general, the council, all that. And
Because the
3 weeks-
mayor declared an emergency during the snowstorm that allowed him to have the ability to do the surcharge, but that
Well-
was maybe because she declared an emergency.
No, it's two different things.
Okay.
When you declare snow emergency,
Yeah.
automatically the meter changes,
Okay.
and
That's a
then
special case.
it's special case, and then it's already there. Snow emergency, the price is on meter and everything. But gas surcharge only comes when the gas price hits a high. And then, the fare is the same. The fare doesn't change.
Mhm.
So the only way we can accommodate ourselves to buy a more expensive gas is they usually give us $1 per fare, $1 per fare. So it helps, like,
Yeah.
but he doesn't have autonomy.
Okay.
So he cannot say, okay, it's an emergency for gas now, so $1 for.
We'll talk to him about that and what he would need. Do you see your colleagues moving towards electric or hybrid electric vehicles at all, or is it still primarily gas?
Well, majority of the taxi right now is hybrid. Majority of them are hybrid. And then anybody who buys a new car right now, they usually buy a hybrid because of the gas.
Yeah.
Electric,
It's hard
they-
for
they
a full
tried
day's
it.
work, I
yeah,
think.
well, they tried electric.
Yeah.
Maybe about 15 years ago. It didn't work because sometimes city can be busy.
Well, there was no infrastructure 15 years ago either.
Well, even now, like I said, you can be busy for taxis sometimes get really busy.
Yeah,
And then you have electric car.
yeah.
And all of a sudden
You
you
need to stop
find
and
a
charge.
fare that is going to go way beyond than your
Your
electric
range.
charge,
Yeah.
your range. But if you have a hybrid,
The hybrid's a good, it
you
does
get
seem like
gas
that is
and
a good,
electric
yeah,
is-
match for the
yeah,
field.
for the taxi, I think hybrid is a lot better than electric car.
So you think, so a lot of people are doing that?
A lot of people are doing hybrid.
And so when you have the hybrid, does that mean you can drive around on the electric charge for a while and then,
Depends on your speed.
okay, yeah,
It goes to electric a certain speed,
uh-huh.
and it goes to gas at certain speed.
So like highway driving,
yeah. So what it does is it switches on and off,
uh-huh,
and then it charges itself.
yeah,
So you don't have to go to a charger and charge it. It charges itself.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Okay. Do you own your own vehicle?
Yes.
Okay. And it's just impossible to paint it back afterward because of the color scheme?
Well, see,
Or
this is
it's
how
just
it
expensive.
works. You can
Yeah.
paint it back.
Yeah.
But this is how it works. You see, the thing is, once you paint the car,
Mm-hmm.
it loses the value. Period. It becomes like an accident car
I see.
because it doesn't have the original paint. It becomes an accident car.
Okay.
So it goes like by half down, no matter how many miles you have, no matter how new it is.
And how have your conversations been with the director about these things?
Well,
Is he amenable to?
He's been supportive.
Okay.
He's been supportive.
Okay.
Very supportive. Actually, like the first time I have ever liked a person who works at the taxi cab.
Wow.
The first time.
Okay. I feel like that's a good note to end on, friends. Thank you for your testimony, all
Thank you.
three of you. Appreciate
Appreciate it.
you. Well done, director. Got a shout out. Okay. We're going to move on to our government witnesses. So we'll now be joined by Director Jonathan Rogers of the Department of For Hire Vehicles. And Dory. Okay. When you guys are settled, I'll have you swear. Have a deck, yeah. Okay. All right, if you could both raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you're about to give to the Committee on Public Works and Operations is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may begin your testimony.
Is my audio okay? Thanks. Okay. Good morning, Councilmember Nadeau, members of the committee, and staff. I'm Jonathan Rogers, Director of the Department of For Hire Vehicles, or DFHV. Here with me today is our agency Chief of Staff, Dory Peters, to my right. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss DFHV's proposed budget for fiscal year 27. FY27 marks Mayor Bowser's final budget proposal for the district, and I'd like to acknowledge her exceptional leadership and unwavering commitment throughout 3 consecutive terms as our mayor. From the broadest perspective, Mayor Bowser's Grow DC theme for FY27 reflects 3 key considerations that drove decision-making. 1, how to drive growth in our economy to fund the services and programs that residents count on. 2, how to keep families in DC and attract new residents. And 3, how to create a business environment that draws new investment and creates new jobs. Despite depleted federal funding sources, DFHV's proposed budget supports these goals and the agency mission of safety, accessibility, and affordability. The federal dollars that once expanded our programs in unprecedented ways have been exhausted, and federal workforce reductions have introduced new pressures on our economy and commercial corridors. That being said, it's important to be clear, DC is still growing. Revenues have slowed, but the city maintains a strong financial foundation on which we can build by making the kinds of strategic and targeted decisions that will allow DC to continue growing while delivering high-quality services that our residents depend on. The FY27 proposed budget for DFHV positions us well to regulate and grow mobility in the district. Turning to the slides in our presentation now, we have illustrated the sources and uses of our FY26 operating budget as a point of comparison. On slide 2, we break down our special purpose revenue, or SPR, and our local budget. SPR comes from licensing fees, permit applications from drivers and companies, a 50-cent surcharge on taxi trips, and a 1% gross receipts fee from private rideshare trips. Local budget comes from the district's general fund. On slide 3, you can see that the budget is being spent this year among programs, agency staffing, and other services. That's FY26. To move to FY27 on slide 4, we show our sources of operating budget, with the SPR accounting for a larger share of the budget than the prior year. And slide 5 summarizes the FY27 expenditures, which again focus mainly on personnel with additional funds for programs and other services. Currently and in FY27, DFHV will continue to safeguard the public by approving and monitoring for-hire operators, holding bad actors accountable for non-compliance. In this way, our agency ensures consumer protection and public safety. We also administer important programs that improve accessible transportation and serve specific populations, such as veterans. In addition, we work with our local businesses to reduce unnecessary requirements that make it more difficult to recruit more drivers, grow their fleets, and ultimately move more of our residents and visitors. I'm proud of the progress we've made in the latest iteration of our wheelchair accessible vehicle pilot, or our WAVE pilot, the rise in popularity of convenient e-hailing of taxis, and the overall growth of for-hire activity. Our Transport DC, or TDC program, serves an average of nearly 2,000 unique passengers monthly and has completed 5,545 trips for wheelchair users so far this fiscal year. The industry's drivers are ambassadors to visitors and reliable navigators for locals alike. Their work is vital to our city. To conclude, DFHV's proposed FY27 budget fosters our agency's efforts to enhance the taxi, rideshare, and food and parcel delivery services in the district. With the resources allocated, I'm confident that we will continue to support our stakeholders and serve the public. Now more than ever, we are proud to run through the tape alongside Mayor Bowser. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm happy to address any questions you have at this time.
Thank you very much. All right. Let's just get this out of the way. Is a majority of the agency's budget reduction in FY27 due to the elimination of DC School Connect?
Yep, that's correct. And I can touch too on the sort of the budget narrative in the budget chapter. The reason it's not more prominent in there is just because the funding has always been one time. So it's not classified as a reduction the way you might expect to see like a program cut. The funding has always been like an enhancement every fiscal year. And so it's not, I guess in OCFO terminology, it's not actually a reduction. It's just that enhancement is not there for FY27. So
It's such a term of art, really.
yeah,
The one-time funds.
yes.
Not being enhancement, it's not being cuts. Okay. Some DC School Connect positions were recurring funds, right? How many of the 13 eliminated FTEs in FY27 are positions that are currently filled or have offers pending?
So all of those 13 are filled today. We've had conversations with the entire team already. So the program is funded through the current fiscal year, so through September 30th. But yeah, those 13 positions are filled today.
Okay, so unless they move to other positions within the agency, they will be losing their jobs at the end of the fiscal year.
Yep, and we have, again, kind of had an extensive sit down with everyone because we are working with DCHR, DOES, and then specifically agencies, sister agencies that might have a need for similar positions and functions like DPR or OSCE, who may need drivers, or our transportation assistant positions who kind of assist with the students on the buses. So we are kind of looking at every option to retain folks and help them transition elsewhere in DC government.
Is School Connect the only program impacted by those FTE reductions?
Yeah, that's where the FTE reductions, almost exclusively are impacting. So no other programs will be affected.
So the approved FY26 budget for School Connect included resources for continuing into the next school year. Is there funding in your budget for running School Connect this September, but not after that?
Yeah, I think technically each year there is that 1 month difference basically where the new fiscal year will start in October, and the upcoming school year has started before that. Am I saying this right? Right.
Yeah.
So that is factored into the budget, but I think that time of year, obviously the summer and leading up to the upcoming school year is kind of our lowest level of activity, where we're preparing for the upcoming school year. So technically, to answer your question, the program is budgeted thinking about the full fiscal year, but the bulk of the resources are kind of allocated during the school year. So
You're not trying to run the buses in September.
correct, yeah, not before, some of the charter schools start a bit earlier than some of the DCPS schools, but
You're
no,
not
they're
going to run them
not.
for school year. I should say, School Connect will not be operating for school year 26, 27.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
And what is the transition plan for winding it down and informing parents, et cetera?
Yep. So I think the sort of external outreach and public engagement with families and with schools is kind of, front and center with our plan in addition to the staffing concerns. And so normally throughout the school year, around this time, we wouldn't be in much communication about the upcoming school year. And I think that's kind of a factor in our plan. As we know what the mayor's proposed budget is. Of course, the budget isn't completely finalized. So again, because the program's always been funded on a one-time basis, we've sort of waited to have complete certainty before we do outreach to families. So it'll basically be following a similar schedule of communication, where we would reach out to the families to inform them that the program is being sunsetted, as well as the school principals and other stakeholders, on the school side. But I think probably fortunately that timing of that won't look drastically different from how it has in years past. So that's sort of the flow of notifying stakeholders.
When would be a good time to follow up and check in on whether the School Connect staff have been able to find other placements within government?
I think, once we're approaching the summer, I think, selfishly at the agency, that is the most kind of convenient time for us because, the school year is still running right now. And so we wanted to be fully transparent with the team and let them know what the budget constraints were this year, and, really thank them for their service. I do want to give a big shout out to the School Connect team. This was purely a budgetary decision. It's not a reflection of the program performance and certainly not the staff performance. And so I think we're all familiar with, from performance oversight, they performed consistently and didn't miss a beat. Rain, snow, snowcrete, they were there. So we really do appreciate what they've done for students in the district. And so we're hoping they continue that commitment through this school year, which folks have been doing thus far. And I think at that time, it would be kind of good for the operation and convenient for everyone to start thinking about transition. And that does still leave, you know, months of buffer between then and the fiscal year end when the program would be completely complete. So I think closer to the summer would be probably the most helpful time.
Do you happen to know how many vacancies there are for similar positions at DPR and to OSSI?
No, I don't have an exact number off the top of my head, but I do, you know, there are some varying requirements like OSSI, the bar is a little higher with if a commercial driver license is required, some things like that. But we've definitely been in conversations before, and I think there's been a small amount of, you know, movement between the agencies and some of those positions before. School Connect staff historically have assisted with DPR over the summer when there's less activity at DFHV for them. So I think there's potential there. And I've been in talks with DCHR. They're actually offering agencies kind of hiring activities and assistance for any agency where employees are affected by, you know, the budget constraints for FY27. So I think we'll be able to identify any positions that are available. But yeah, I don't have hard numbers at the moment.
What's being done with the vehicles and other equipment?
Yeah, so the vehicles, we own them all. So we have options with that. And they are all in, you know, a good state of repair. So they're very serviceable. So I think, you know, other agencies could put them to use if necessary. I don't think we would need to surplus any of the vehicles at the moment, but that, you know, that's an option if necessary. The lot where they currently operate is a leased facility, but you know that lease could be taken on by another agency. So you know, I have received some questions from sister agencies. You know, so you could imagine someone who needs lot space. I think there's plenty who could take over that as well. So it's kind of, I think, you know, in the works, and our cluster deputy mayors and city administrator, I think, will be considering where needs are to reallocate those resources.
Would it be your recommendation that we retain the vehicles for the time being?
DFHV doesn't have, you know, an urgent need for them. But we are approached quite often by sister agencies for transportation solutions. So I'm sure there's an agency kind of waiting in the wings that could figure out a productive use for them. A lot of the partnership we do with other agencies is kind of working with some of our other stakeholders in the industry, like taxi drivers, to figure out transportation programs. But we've been approached by other agencies, DCPS, to see what, you know, if our School Connect vehicles aren't spoken for 24/7, what other people they could transport. So I do think another agency would be happy to take them on.
How many are there? How many vehicles?
That I want to say it's in the low 30s. I think 37. And you're familiar with sort of the size of the vehicles.
Yeah, like a minibus.
Yeah, that's a good term for it.
Okay. Any other resources that you've procured to run the program that we're going to need to do something with?
Most of the other aspects of the program are like on a contractual basis, or there's not a lot of, you know, other hard equipment. It's more software applications and contracts and things like that for some of the drivers. So we'll be reaching out to those partners as well.
Do the vehicles just become part of the fleet? Like DPW ends up managing them if you're not using them?
I think that's a typical.
There's a lot of heads nodding
Yeah.
behind you, so.
So at one point, we actually leased some of the fleet directly from DPW.
Yeah.
But it was more effective to have the vehicles in-house. I do think that's kind of a likely outcome.
Yeah, so then they become like part of DPW's charge to store them and
Yeah.
service them.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, if that doesn't work for some reason, then that's when like the surplus option comes into play.
Okay. Do you know if the mayor plans to provide alternatives to School Connect through other agencies or programs?
Well, I think we've always considered Kids Ride Free program to be, plan A for school transportation in the district. And so I think surely part of the calculation, given the budget constraints with the close of the pilot program, was thinking about the other options that are available, like Kids Ride Free, and I think to the improved public safety kind of environment we're in now compared to, I think this is the fourth school year we're operating in, so it was a drastically different situation in terms of public safety. So I think given those factors, we are hoping for the close to 300 students who are in the program this school year, they'll be able to take advantage of our public transportation.
The Health Committee made us aware of an issue that DBH is having with being the administering agency of My Rides. According to DBH's hearing responses, DBH previously had an MOU with the Department for Hire Vehicles, which ended on September 29th, 2025. Once the responsibility for managing the program fully transitioned to DBH, the agency had to follow the district's standard grant process. The selected organization requested a 30% administrative fee, which exceeded the 15% limit, allowed under the program's federal grant. The organization later emailed that they would not accept the revised terms, so the award was withdrawn. Have you been in touch with DBH about how to troubleshoot this issue?
Not to my knowledge this fiscal year. We're always happy to, be a partner. We did kind of transition that program back to DBH fully, as you stated. And, so at DFHV, we facilitated the program through a grant as well. So, there are similar obstacles, but we're always happy to help assist if necessary. So I can definitely reach out to DBH to make sure we're doing everything we can.
And what made you decide to transition that back to DBH?
Yeah, just in general, we consider many of those programs. There have been others that we kind of helped start up as a pilot. And I think agencies come to us because we can do that quickly, knowing that we do sort of have access to a pool of, whether it's taxi companies or other transportation providers that are kind of willing and ready if they have the capacity. But, in that model, DFHV is taking on kind of unbudgeted administrative costs as well. And so eventually the expectation is always, we will help you get this started. I think My Rides, we did for 3 fiscal years, maybe more. And eventually, we kind of hand it back once it's been up and running with the hope that the host agency can kind of take it from there. So again, open to revisiting that. But that's what we've done with other programs as well. We still do Vets Rides with MOVA, who is, a much smaller agency with, grant making and all those administrative functions are a larger burden for a small office like that. So yeah, I mean, and I think a question that's come up before is just kind of the balance of programs at our agency versus our core focus on regulating the industry and focusing on the improvements we want to make with for-hire service.
Well, speaking of that, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to Mr. Tewaldi's testimony about taxi livery. What's your position on changing the required taxi color scheme?
Yeah, I'm honestly very excited to talk about this in our roundtable. It's coming up. You might want to bring snacks. I don't know how long it'll last, but I think there's a lot to delve
Thank you
into.
for the warning.
Yeah.
We like snacks. Well, you should bring snacks, I
definitely.
think.
I don't know if my testimony has a time limit, but
Okay. All right.
color scheme's a big one, and I think it's kind of emblematic of a lot of the dynamics in the industry. So I guess the shortest way to answer that is we are thinking through a pilot program right now, another pilot, but core to what we do, where we would like to be able to test the impact of removing the color scheme or not requiring it for a limited number of vehicles. We don't want to rush into that and not anticipate some unintended consequence where some other aspect of like the vehicle quality or the service provided like also suffers without the color scheme. So there is a balance to strike, but knowing some of the other goals we have, some of which are legislated mandates around electrification or just improving accessibility, any barrier to the industry for taxi service, especially, I think is even more acute when you're looking at wheelchair vehicles or electric vehicles. And so that's where our pilot was focusing, and we're thinking through to specifically prioritizing those if there are electric vehicles out there where interested taxi drivers or existing taxi drivers would prefer to enter that vehicle into service. We would, try to eliminate the color scheme barrier, still be requiring the dome light and actually some other, emblem, something similar to trade dress, really, that would help customers identify that this is a legit taxi. We have some pretty cool ideas about how to offer even more tools for passengers to verify using the dome light and this emblem with a QR code to verify that, yes, this is a real taxi, even if it doesn't have the red and silver color scheme. So that would be limited to a smaller number of vehicles. But we have actually been approached by taxi companies that have said, I have drivers who have vehicles that are approaching the age limit or the mileage limit and need to phase out. They actually already own an EV, but as you heard, they don't want to paint their Tesla silver
Right.
and red.
Right.
Understandably. And so, that's a much newer, probably nicer vehicle for a passenger that could enter service. And so that's what we would like to test. And maybe I'll provide more details in the hearing, but not every city has a color scheme for their taxis. So there's places to kind of compare with and see what the trade-offs are.
Does the color scheme change need to happen through statute?
I believe so.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Trying to remember, I was around, but not here, right? So
Yeah, I
that was a
believe
big change
so.
at the council. Okay. So, gas surcharge seems like a good time. Any reason you haven't done it?
So we have submitted an emergency rulemaking, but I think it's another delicate thing where you want to strike the right balance. It is a lot like the emergency snow surcharge. I can explain what the agency's authority is in both of those. But I think what we really confirmed with the companies and drivers indirectly with the snow fee is, it can actually backfire if you're using it inappropriately. So if that puts, the taxis way out of scale with what the competition is charging, that could actually discourage drivers being out on the street and available, or kind of punish the passengers with a higher price. That's a $15 fare. So it's an even bigger kind of factor, I think, than what we were considering, like $1, that neighborhood for the fuel surcharge, just given the higher gas prices. But so for the snow fee, the agency actually has the authority to initiate that independent of the mayor's snow emergency, which is a good thing, because the snow emergency that the mayor declares, that's, I think, first and foremost, among other things, that lets the agency prepare, or lets the government prepare for clearing the streets. It's a lot about the snow evacuation routes and the parking. So really getting those big arterial streets passable. It does, and when that goes into effect, it might not even be snowing yet, right? So we've seen that before. So we wouldn't want to be charging passengers in a taxi $15 when it's supposed to snow in 12 hours. On the other hand, yeah, it's a regulatory action. Emergency rulemaking is what we would do for the fuel surcharge, because that is actually changing the regulated taxi rate for like how the fare structure works. So we that structure already contemplates the snow emergency. It doesn't have a similar option to just initiate a fuel surcharge. So it has happened in the past, but I think it does, warrant careful consideration for that reason to not, actually backfire and discourage ridership.
So you've submitted the emergency rulemaking. What's the next step?
It's just being reviewed internally through the normal channel, which is, going up through our deputy mayor cluster, which is the government operations cluster, and onward up through EOM.
And then it goes to the public for comment?
No, for the emergency, as soon as it's approved completely, once the agency director signs, then it can be effective.
Okay.
And that, we're trying to prep the taxi meter companies to be ready to do so if that's the direction we go.
And is that only in effect for a certain period before it has to become a permanent rulemaking?
Yep,
Okay.
yep, that would be the case. And we could always stop it at any time should conditions change. So if the emergency is effective for 6 months, there's no reason it couldn't be paused or stopped before that time frame.
Okay. Back to the budget. What is DFHV's vacancy savings rate for FY26 and FY27?
I have that one moment. So for FY26, we were at, or currently at 14.6%. And then FY27 is a bit higher at 17.4. And I can let you know the current vacancies that we are hiring for at the moment. We're about to name our permanent enforcement division chief. We have an IT specialist position, 2 VIOs, and then our head of human resources.
Okay. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 positions.
6.
6.
5, yes, you
Okay.
were right.
Why does hearing services at DFHV still have $229,000 and 2 FTEs?
Yeah, I think that's actually kind of a clerical error in the OCFO system. The positions are not in that hearing examiner category, so we're going to correct that.
Where are they?
So it's actually a facilities related position and then a human resources specialist. So we will correct that terminology.
All right. And the 229K is tied to the 2 FTEs?
Yes.
Why does the description of the hearing services division still say OAH temporarily adjudicates infractions issued by DFHV?
I think
Same
that's-
issue?
Yeah, basically the same issue. Yeah, at some point we made a transition from kind of an in-house neutral party, which, I would argue probably didn't feel neutral, through the complaints process and any hearing examiner type roles. So OAH really performs that function now. Like if you file a complaint with DFHV, we reach our conclusion, and then if you disagree with that, then you go to OAH to contest it.
Okay. All right. Under agency management, energy comm and building rentals, 712-100C. There seems to be some significant variation in budget and spending. What's going on with this line item?
So I think this one might look like there's numbers are jumping around because it's kind of a broad category with agency management, energy, communication, and building rentals. So there's several activities happening. So I think in FY26, there was some movement with Octo and DC Net, whether that's like cell phone replacement or different IT things like that, that either hasn't been necessary, the following fiscal year. So there's some fluctuation with that. But in that same overall bucket, we're also paying for that lot we discussed for School Connect. That was 84,000 roughly in FY25. So I think some of how like the spending might appear to be fluctuating. It's because so much is lumped into that category.
It was budgeted at 15K in FY25 and 26, but actually that $84,000 was spent. So that sounds like a good trick. But nothing spent out of that line item for FY26 to date. Is that right?
We anticipate spending soon related to similar Octo expenses.
Okay.
Okay, and apparently we've already incurred a $4,000 cost there, but yeah, usually the actual transaction
lag.
happens. Yeah.
Okay. Under the Compliance and Enforcement Division, there was a $30,000 budgeted amount budgeted for supplies in FY26 with only 5,000 spent so far. Do you have a spend plan for those funds?
I believe so. Oh yeah, so uniforms is probably the primary thing we're looking at. You didn't ask this, but I'm excited, so I'll share it that this will be the first year when we make that purchase. We're including shorts for the VIOs who expressed interest in that. It gets hot in the summer here, and I've been at several activities where our VIOs are sweltering. So not all of them wanted shorts, but
I do feel like there is a social media video opportunity here. Like
yeah, I would like
VIOs now with shorts.
right.
Yeah.
That could be cool.
That'd
So
be fun.
that'll be part of an improvement I'm honestly excited to make because I wouldn't want to be wearing the vest and full length pants in the heat and humidity in July and August. So that'll be part of the uniform purchase.
Any idea how much a uniform costs?
I think 6,000 is a rough estimate, but that includes kind of the full package where they do have some protective gear. So
Not the shorts.
I think
Are we getting a discount for short pants?
less material.
Yeah.
I think it could be a little cheaper. but
500,000,
yes.
$5,565. All right. So was this a component of the FIS for the carriers for hire law at all? No.
no.
Okay. Based on our last hearing, I thought we'd have the final rulemaking on carriers for hire by now. Is that still imminent?
It is imminent. I do apologize. We've definitely taken I think a careful approach and really engaged all of the stakeholders ahead of time that we can. Obviously there's going to be a public comment period. But if I had to estimate, I would say in 2 weeks, we'll see it published in the register. I know it's making its final rounds through all the approval process. So we've had some back and forth edits already, crossed our T's and dotted the I's. So I think it will be published imminently.
So there's this thing I do when things aren't being released timely where I just go to the city administrator's office and sit there until it happens. So do I need to have a sit-in or is it actually coming?
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
think so. I know the general counsel in the city administrator's office has had their concerns addressed. So, we always get really great feedback from OCA and the mayor's office, and we've incorporated that. So,
All right, because I did pack lunch today just in case.
okay.
All right. Why has there been such a significant increase in the agency's overtime spending? And I'll say more, there was a $22,000 total spend last fiscal year. And at this point in FY26, you've already spent 63,000.
Yeah, it's actually something we aim for. So I guess maybe in contrast to some agencies, it's not overtime we're spending to do our core function or like normal tour of duty. It's actually how we do a lot of our safety focused Vision Zero enforcement. So we want to spend as much as we can. A lot of it does come through the Highway Safety Office and NHTSA funding. That's federal money for sort of behavioral traffic safety things. So we're actually aiming to spend as much of that as we can.
Okay, so just to clarify, it's good because it means you're doing more Vision Zero work, which
Yep.
has to be done via overtime because of the hours it takes place.
That's how we do some of it. Like the nightlife task force, we focus a lot on. It's not we can technically do. We can always enforce Title 18 and Title 31. So like the more traffic violations in Title 18 versus strictly for hire things in Title 31. But this is sort of the way we carve out and devote specific attention just to safety related things. So we use the Vision Zero grant for that.
Okay. The mayor's proposal zeroes out your overtime budget completely. So how will that impact your operations and services?
That's kind of what I was just addressing, that there was a separate line item called overtime.
Yeah.
But that's really sort of not the primary way we do this safety enforcement. And yeah, it just kind of works well through the grant that overtime opportunities are offered that way to the officers that would like to take advantage of it. And then we're able to do all the safety focused deployments. So that other pot of funds isn't necessary to do this safety focus.
So is the highway funding a separate line item in your budget or is that a transfer from DDOT?
That's an MOU,
Yeah.
yeah, both transferred to us. Yeah.
Is that highway safety money at risk with the federal upheaval? Or are you still expecting it?
I'm not aware. I mean, I think it's been, pretty consistent over many years. It's kind of what NHTSA is, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and so they make these grants to all the states. Each state has a highway safety office, so I think that's pretty secure.
Okay. Why was there such a significant increase of $1.2 million in projected revenue in the consumer service fund? Was that due to the increase in passenger surcharge that hadn't been fully accounted for?
Yeah, we kind of had a little back and forth on just the projected revenues from, primarily the gross receipts that come in from the private rideshare activity, but also the surcharge, the 50-cent surcharge for taxi trips. And so it's just a reflection of higher projected revenue there, which is a good sign.
Are there any program management staff devoted to oversight of carriers for hire, or is that taken on by existing staff?
So at the moment, we have assigned any necessary duties to existing staff. We've kind of set up what we call like an account manager function, which is how we work with the passenger service equivalents, or like we have an account manager who handles the taxi companies and taxi meter companies. And so that's sort of the structure we're using now with existing staff, like an account manager who will perform the functions of reviewing the applications when the carrier for hire companies need to apply for operating authority with us, and then reporting requirements. And then we have people on our information technology side who will be receiving and analyzing any of the data that is coming in.
Okay. Do you think carriers for hire stakeholders could use representation on your advisory boards?
We would love that. I think after performance oversight, we actually reached out to some of the people who testified.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's lacking at the moment. It's probably not even explicitly called out in the statute because those things didn't exist then. So yeah, I think it's kind of definitely something we feel is missing right now for the For Hire Vehicle Advisory Council, if not any of the other groups we have.
The carrier for hire law includes provisions encouraging mode shift of delivery towards more sustainable vehicles like e-bikes. Does DFHV have funding in this or next fiscal year to initiate those programs and incentives?
I guess it depends on what kind of incentives you're thinking about. I think a lot of sort of the policy structures we could establish might not necessarily really be, financially dependent. So we don't have, funding identified necessarily to like provide financial incentives, I guess. But I don't think that's the only tool we could use.
What kind of tools are you thinking of?
Well, I guess I really liked how the law was, written in the first place because it does categorize the different classes of vehicles. I think there's some natural incentive using smaller, more efficient vehicles anyway to cut your costs as a delivery driver, or simply navigate the city more quickly because you're not in a large vehicle that is contributing to congestion and getting stuck. So I think that's why you already see people on the motor driven cycles, which is the technical term for a moped, where you're sitting on a motor vehicle, whether it's electric or gas powered. I think really I want to explore more options to encourage the zero emissions modes, even though, as we've heard today, that's saving you money right now because of where gas prices are. But I think, if you look, the average moped is gas powered, is definitely for if you're driving a sedan to do this activity. So maybe that will come up in the hearing as well, the roundtable. But I think it's something we can definitely check with other jurisdictions that may be ahead of us. But I think it is an important opportunity that the law provides us to really get creative with rewarding, aside from the kind of built-in reward you get from spending less money to do this job or getting to your destination faster. Other ways we can incentivize that, because I agree, it's safer, it's greener, and it delivers the services faster. So
I think I saw you were at an event this week about the launch of a new e-bike delivery pilot.
Yeah.
Is that primarily a DDOT thing, or was DFHV involved in getting that going?
yeah, I can't take credit for initiating it. That was definitely DDOT, and so they're working. It's called LACY. It's the Los Angeles Clean Tech Initiative, I believe, who works across the country, obviously. And then DoorDash is a partner in it as well. And so, yeah, it's a really cool program. DDOT works with a company called Wiz that provides, I think at some discount, the actual electric
So
bicycles.
like the green bike?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've probably seen them.
Yeah.
These, people who are using the delivery apps can get cheaper access to those vehicles. They can rent them. And then the pilot that it now has its second location is actually public locations to do battery swapping. So you don't have to, kind of suffer the inconvenience or even safety issues with taking one or more e-bike batteries, into your apartment or wherever you are and charging them. And you also don't have to wait for them to charge. That, this is a location you're probably already going to be. The new one's in Southwest. The other one is in Adams Morgan. And so, if your battery's low on your e-bike, you're making DoorDash deliveries, you can just stop and in a couple minutes swap out a battery for a fully charged one. You don't have to worry about charging it or, owning it or how long it takes to charge. So it's kind of like Capital Bike Share for the batteries, really. So yeah, I think we are obviously staying in coordination with DDOT. And I think as the companies, the carry for hire companies are making the transition and starting to see us as the, kind of their front door to district government and their primary regulator, will be able to have a more active role in thinking about innovative solutions like that.
Does the agency have a plan for the $500,000 in the way of incentive funding for FY27? Is that still funded?
Yep.
Oh.
As far as I know, we do have a plan. Yeah, I can say a lot about how well what we call 3.0, we're in our third iteration of the pilot. We've really been focusing on driver recruitment and getting waves, wheelchair accessible vehicle taxis on the street. And, we've learned through the iterations that taking into account what we've already done, there's really still a need to repair vehicles, help purchase new vehicles, still incentivize drivers to do that activity. So we've done recruitment on that side as well, but I know we've put at least 15 vehicles into service that either weren't there before or were about to go out of service. And then for brand new drivers, we've worked with DOES and some of the companies to have basically like hiring events where we walk them through what is a complicated process, another roundtable topic, but to go from having no experience as a driver or a taxi driver to go through the steps of getting your Face ID, which I have done. It's helpful to have a guide in doing that. And so we did have one event so far at DFHV where we brought in, I think up to 20 people who were looking for employment. Some of them were second chance residents. And so we're looking to do even more of that. But so far, I'm pretty optimistic just about focusing on those things and how many vehicles we've gotten back on the road that that kind of that box is checked, and now we have to get them into actual wheelchair trips. Some of the numbers have really gone up. Like we for just waves that are registered now, I believe we're into the 90s where we had been in the 60s. And then it's kind of aiming even higher to make sure those vehicles are not just doing trips, but they're actually doing wheelchair trips. So we've required for them to count to the fleet requirement, they need to do at least one wheelchair passenger trip every 3 months, like one a quarter, to count toward the fleet requirement for that company. They have to be on dispatch. So I think that's a higher bar than we've asked before. And then the first thing you asked was what's our plan for FY27? So we have an exciting plan for FY27. I think I talked about it in performance oversight, but we did a request for information to anyone out there in the industry to ask them how they might do wheelchair taxi service better than is happening now. We got 5 different responses. I've signed an NDA, so I can't, get into the weeds about that, but we are going to move to an RFP based on the encouraging responses we got. And that's what I would like to focus the pilot funding on. We asked about how could you do sustainable wheelchair service, from your perspective, that is bona fide taxi service, like not some separate program that's actually not a taxi, just plain old market rate service. And what barriers might there be, especially focusing on the areas where we know we're falling short right now, like in the evenings and overnight. And in general, what we heard back was it's not as heavy a lift as we may have thought. There are operators that are already doing similar things, and so there are economies of scale that they might take advantage of. We probably don't need as large of a fleet as we may have guessed to, confirm what the demand is and then, adjust to meet it. I hope we do induce more demand because I think it probably is suppressed right now. And the number of requests we see for a wheelchair accessible taxi at 1 a.m, they may be low, but that might be because people don't have a lot of faith they're going to find a vehicle quickly at 1 a.m. So I'm really hopeful that we will, get more specific with responses to an RFP and be able to fund something exciting in FY27.
Okay. Anything else you want to add?
No, but I thank you for the questions.
I thank you for your testimony. Those are all the questions I have for you today.
Okay,
Thank you
thanks
very
very
much.
much.
Okay. We'll now be joined by the Director of the Office of Contracting and Procurement, Nancy Hateman. Ready? We'll swear you now. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury the testimony you are about to give to the Committee on Public Works and Operations is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Wonderful. You may begin your testimony.
Good morning, Chairperson Nadeau and members of the Committee on Public Works and Operations. I am Nancy Hateman, Chief Procurement Officer of the District of Columbia. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the Office of Contracting and Procurement's fiscal year 2027 budget. Mayor Bowser's proposed fiscal year 2027 budget, Grow DC, was formulated with three key considerations in mind: how to drive growth in our economy to fund the services and programs residents count on, how to keep families in DC and attract new residents, and how to create a business environment that draws new investment and creates new jobs. The federal dollars that once expanded our programs in unprecedented ways have been exhausted, and federal workforce reductions have introduced new pressures on our economy and commercial corridors. Revenues have slowed, but the city maintains a strong financial foundation on which we can build by making the kinds of strategic and targeted decisions that will allow DC to continue growing while delivering the high-quality services our residents depend on. Reflecting the mayor's vision, OCP remains steadfast in its mission to procure high-quality goods and services for 79 district agencies. For fiscal year 27, OCP's proposed operating budget is $26.7 million, a net decrease of $2.8 million, or 9.5% from the fiscal year 26 approved budget. Despite the reduced operating budget, a $7.9 million capital investment will enable a bold transformation of our procurement system. Working closely with the Executive Office of the Mayor and the Assistant City Administrator, we are advancing the Procurement Automated Support System PASS modernization project to significantly upgrade our procurement infrastructure, replacing manual workflows with a streamlined end-to-end process. To understand the urgency of this project, it is important to look at the history of our current system. The legacy PASS infrastructure has served as the backbone of the district procurement for over 2 decades. Over time, however, its aging architecture has led to fragmented workflows, disjointed integrations, and a heavy reliance on manual workarounds. While previous efforts to modernize the system were paused due to shifting resources, restarting this project is now a critical operational necessity. Upgrading PASS is essential to mitigate the risk of system failure, adapt to modern security standards, and eliminate administrative bottlenecks that burden both our workforce and our vendor community. OCP is now actively working towards the replacement of our legacy procurement and vendor management system. This past quarter, we onboarded a team of 10 contractors to work alongside district technology experts. The team members have already identified dozens of business and technical requirements, documented workflows, and created task lists to ensure a successful system go live in fiscal year 28. We are actively collaborating with the Office of the Chief Financial Officer and the Office of the Chief Technology Officer to ensure the system meets business requirements of all agencies while also modernizing data flows. Requirement gathering sessions between the OCFO, OCTO, and OCP for Phase 1 are wrapping up at the end of April. To advance this effort, a contract with a software implementer is in the final stages, and we aim to award this contract in the coming weeks. A major priority of this modernization is improving vendor experience, making it easier for businesses across the district to interact and do business with the district government. This system upgrade will consolidate registration, invoicing, and solicitation interfaces, reducing the number of portals required by a vendor from 3 down to just 1. This unified experience will eliminate redundant logins and simplify the entire procurement journey. This phase will go live to vendors at the beginning of fiscal year 27. While we are eager to launch this modernized procurement platform, it is equally critical to maintain the stability of our current system. OCP manages the purchase of $5.2 billion in goods, services, and construction annually. Until the new system is fully implemented and tested, we rely entirely on our legacy infrastructure to support our client agencies. Continued funding for the maintenance of the legacy pass system is essential to prevent operational downtime and ensure uninterrupted service delivery across the district during the transition period. In closing, while the fiscal year 27 budget reflects difficult choices, it prioritizes our shared DC values and maintains vital core services. OCP is proud to support these priorities as we build a best-in-class, transparent procurement system. We are grateful for the leadership of Mayor Bowser, City Administrator Donahue, and Assistant City Administrator Rodriguez, who have been instrumental in supporting us through the fiscal year as we serve the district. We also extend our appreciation to Chairperson Nadeau and the members of the Committee on Public Works and Operations for their support and for providing us with this opportunity to testify. I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. All right. Your proposed budget includes a $2.7 million reduction in local funds, with approximately $1.5 million of that coming from personnel services. Can you explain what's driving that reduction?
Certainly, we had personal services drop by $1.587 million, and that reflects a realignment of personnel service costs due to the MARC reduction and the alignment of OCP's vacancy savings.
So that change included a reduction of 18 FTEs. Can you confirm whether the addition of 11 FTEs under special purpose revenue funds partially offsets the decrease of the 18 FTEs in local funding?
Yes, it does partially offset that. So the 11 would go onto the SPR budget, and that would remain with the net decrease of 7 FTEs.
Is the shift of FTEs from local to SPR tied specifically to the surplus property program?
I'm going to say partially,
Okay.
in that some of the FTEs that have transferred are already, the surplus property program is run by our business resources division. And some of those FTEs are already part of that division. They just were not on that budget. So that makes sense that they would be there, and they do align that work. The other ones really are transferred based on the budget cap from the MARC.
Okay. What's the breakdown?
Of the,
How many are actually part of the division?
6,
Okay.
and then 5 are not. And I guess I should clarify, 6 are either, most of the ones are part of that division. I think there is one who does work related to that division, but is not technically right now part of that division.
Okay. What outcomes or improvements are expected as a result of the shift?
Well, the main outcome for OCP is that we do get to retain the staff in positions that are currently filled and performing operations necessary for OCP.
The remaining $1.2 million reduction is non-personnel services. Can you describe which programs or services will be affected by this reduction?
Sure. The one of the non-personnel service areas is in the category of other services and charges, and that accounts for OCP contractors. And then the other, the contractors support the purchase card program and some of the SDP operations. SDP is our systems data and performance team. The other accounting group is equipment and machinery, and that mainly would impact the strategic logistics center and warehouse operations.
breaking this down a little bit further, there appears to be a $217,000 reduction in the contract and procurement line item and $161,000 in customer experience. What impact do you expect these reductions to have on program performance and outcomes?
Okay, that reduction, well, those reductions relate to basically two positions. One would be a contract specialist position that supports the public safety and justice cluster. And the $161,000 reduction would impact the Procurement Training Institute and a training specialist position.
Are there other people within the Procurement Training Institute that will continue that program?
The program would continue,
Okay.
yes.
Now, I also see a $150,000 decrease for the training and development program. Is that same cut or something else?
That is a different
Okay.
one, and that would primarily impact, for example, the number of courses that we could offer in a year or the creation of new courses as they are developed, as we work to develop them.
Mm-hmm. Are the new training courses in the quality management tool fully implemented?
Now, we're still working on that. We have, with our LMS, our learning management system, we are working on implementing that and completing that this fiscal year. So then next fiscal year, we would have courses completely on it. We have right now, through our membership in the National Association of State Procurement Officials, the ability to connect with their courses through our LMS. And now we are creating the courses that are more district specific or district focused. And the quality management tool has undergone its initial configuration. However, its deployment has not fully occurred yet.
Do you expect to be able to fully deploy it this fiscal year?
Yes.
There's also a large reduction of approximately $1.9 million in procurement management and support. Could you say more about that?
Okay, that is basically the reduction of 7 FTEs from the local budget to meet the mark. And those are, the majority are procurement positions.
Mm-hmm.
And they generally right now would be providing a direct support to human services agencies, IT, public works, transportation, and health.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 different areas.
Yeah,
and
there's
people.
multiple ones from human services area.
Okay,
And they are all vacant positions at this time.
got it. But they are positions that you had hoped to fill to make the procurement process smoother and more timely.
Yes.
Will this impact the timeliness of contracts and procurement?
Well, right now, since they are vacant positions and we have been working or understanding that they are going to be vacant, so we've been working around that. Obviously, we have a large number of vacancies, so anytime we can fill any vacancies is always good.
Are you concerned about retention of existing staff with these vacancies remaining?
I think right now our retention is pretty stable right now. It's an interesting situation in that when the federal government had a lot of people that were either laid off or released, we were able to hire a number, but now the federal government is hiring back. So we have had some of those people move back to the federal government, but in terms of the employees that we've had, maybe longer term employees, they're pretty stable in staying with OCP.
Okay. In local funds, your proposed budget includes an enhancement of $816,426 in the procurement division. Can you say more about this?
Yeah, that is an amount that was added back to the budget to offset some of the vacancy savings that are built into our budget.
So to confirm, your proposed FY27 budget shows a decrease of 7 FTEs. They are procurement positions
Yes, they are all procurement
and
positions,
they are currently vacant.
and they are currently vacant. Yes.
Okay. How many vacancies does OCP have currently?
We have 37 vacancies on our local budget. Of those, 7 are being used to meet our mark, and that leaves a total of 30 vacancies. However, we're still going to have to hold the majority of our vacancies to meet the vacancy savings target of 20.1%. So that equates to about 19 or 20 positions that we would have to hold.
Which positions have been vacant the longest?
Sure, we have had, well, we have 2 supervisory contract specialist positions that are grade 14. One has been vacant for 223 days, the other for 204. We have contract specialist at 113 for 181 days, a property disposal specialist, grade 13 for 176 days, and a contract specialist, grade 13 for 130. And those have 4 of those have been held vacant because of vacancy savings, and in one we were recruiting and the candidate failed the suitability.
Thank you. Turning to the capital budget, the $6.7 million in funding was previously allocated for the past modernization project last year, right?
Yes.
How much of that has been obligated?
As of now, $3,013,393 has been obligated to date. We have other obligations that will be coming up soon in that we are in the final stages of selecting our system integrator contractor and the licensing agreement, so those will add to that amount.
OCP's proposed capital budget includes an additional 7.9 million for the modernization project. What's the status of that project?
Okay, the project is underway. It's actually rather exciting to see. We are now moving from the design phase more into seeing the actual development and the work and the results of all of that. So we are, the requirements gathering sessions are expected to include at the end of this month, so sometime next week. And those we're working in conjunction with the Office of the Chief Financial Officer on, because of the fact that our first phase is going to involve moving some things to the DIFS system. We have onboarded 10 contractors to support past modernization. And they cover a range of things from change management to developing the training to the technical requirements and working on our reporting requirements as well. So they are the contractors that we anticipate having. And then the only additional ones would be really the integrator and the licenses, at least what we have planned now. The full system go live for the first phase, which is in IVE, improving the vendor experience. That is scheduled to go live on October 1, 2026. The remaining part, which is actually the bigger part of it, which is sourcing and contracting, would go live for October 1, 2027.
Very exciting.
We're excited. It's really good progress is being made. And I would like to add that I have been able to hire a chief information officer who's been now with the agency about 6 months. And he brings a lot of experience in implementing systems and we're enterprise systems especially. So we're excited about that as well.
Great. Okay. Do you expect you'll need additional funding next year as well?
If for fiscal year 28 budget, there will probably be some needs for funding. There will be post go live. There's going to be a period where support is needed, Usually could be a 3-month or so period of time. And then we also, an ongoing cost will be the licenses. That will be a cost every year for the system. And then also in that fiscal year, we will really look at what else we can do in terms of bringing independent agencies on board. And if there's any other things or connections, systems, applications that we want to add to that as well. So the bulk of what we're doing is covered through the fiscal year 27 budget, and then 28 would be those things that I just mentioned.
All right. I want to just be a little more granular about the past budget. So can you break down how the 7.9 million is being allocated? What
Yes, I-
specific components or phases?
Yeah, I do have that. Don't see it right in front of me, but I can tell you that the first category is program management, which is about, I think about $810,000.
Okay.
And that includes basically the 3 leads for the project. That's the 3 leads. Then we have about $5.5 million, give or take a few dollars. That's really the heart of it, the system integration, the system development. And then we have the licensing cost, which is about $660,000. No, I'm not saying that right. $660,000.
I got you. You had it.
I don't,
You-
okay. I
You
did
had
have
it. It's just been a lot of math today. So
Yes. And then there is one more category at the end that I can't remember right now, but it's the biggest number is the $5.5 million for the system itself, the integration. That's going to include the implementer and all the other things that go along with getting that system launched.
okay. And you said launch July 2027. Is that what you said?
No, October 1 of 2027 for
Okay.
for the full system, including sourcing and contracting.
Okay.
This year for October 2026 would just be the IVE portion, the improving the vendor experience.
Got it. Okay. Anything new or different about the project scope that you want to highlight?
No, I think right now we're very much consistent on the project scope, and it's moving along as planned. Obviously, the plans will shift a little bit in terms of timing of some things, but the deadlines that I gave you are the ones that we are sticking with.
Did you notice that the narrative in the SIP repeats last year's language? Even we noticed that it looked like it was outdated language in the SIP narrative because you've got all this funding and the narrative doesn't provide any justification for it. Just
Yeah.
an oversight?
I assume so.
Okay. And that's why we ask so many questions.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So given the complaints we've received about the transparency portal's accuracy and effectiveness, how is the portal being factored into the past modernization process?
It's absolutely being factored into it, and from a couple different ways. One is that a huge difference between our current system and where we're going is all the contracts are going to be developed in the system. So right now, if we put things on the portal, it's got many more manual components to it. So once we have the new system, there will be so much more that will more just automatically happen. So that's one aspect that we won't have to rely on people to scan and upload a document in a timely fashion.
Is it going to be fully integrated?
The portal, Well, that's still being evaluated a little bit to see how we can do it with the system as we go forward. Because right now it does use a data warehouse as well. And so these are some of the things that will be worked out as we are working on the requirements more once we start with this sourcing and contracting. So there will be a portal and it will be done in the way that's most efficient to get the information there quickly and accurately.
Okay. Turning to EPS, you stated during last budget oversight hearing that OCP planned to update existing solicitation and contract templates to reflect the requirements of the program by the first quarter of FY '26. Can you confirm whether this has occurred?
It has not. There's a slightly revised timeline for that, which is now the third quarter of fiscal year '26. OCP and DOEE are working together to align the updates with the automation of the certification waiver process. So as that process is being finalized, then the updates will be made as well.
And when will the FY '25 sustainable purchasing report be available online?
In early May of this year.
What steps is OCP taking to increase the EPS spend and prevent recording errors?
Okay, well, one thing that we're doing to increase the spending is OCP has a weekly brief that we send out to all the procurement staff in OCP. And part of that, there's discussion each week on some aspect of the EPPS and what's available, what specifications are available for the products that we have developed the EPPS specifications for. So it's always a reminder to the team that that is there and to look at it. And another thing is now OCP will soon be starting our acquisition planning training for agencies for the acquisition plan for fiscal year '27. And so we are incorporating some of the EPPS training topic into that training so that the agencies understand about the specifications that are available and considering them and including them in their procurement planning. We also will work with DOEE on the review of requisitions to just ensure that the information is properly recorded in the requisition. It's more like a quality control kind of review of the requisition. So that if we see that there's something that needs to be addressed, we can do that.
Great. For the period of FY '22 to '25, what percentage of contracts exceeding $1 million were sole source solicitations?
5.1%.
For the period of FY '22 to '25, what percentage of contracts with option years were sole source solicitations?
3.7%.
Last year, the committee approved the subtitle Surplus Property Sales Fund Amendment Act of 2025. Can you provide an update on how you've used these funds within the agency's budget in FY '26 so far?
Yeah, these funds have been used to pay the compensation for the employees that were switched to compensation of employees under this funding source. For fiscal year '26, 5 employees were switched to that funding source. So that some of that funding is used for that, as well as operational needs within OCP. For example, reprogrammings to cover existing salaries for staff that were on the local budget, and then other NPS items such as technology or contractors for the Strategic Logistics Center or office supplies, those kinds of things.
And have you had to use the funds for any emergency operations?
No, not for any of the declared emergencies like the snow or anything like that. That's all handled separately.
Speaking of snow, what is OCP's involvement with managing emergency contracts for snow clearance?
Well, we have during the snow situation, I guess. OCP supports the awarding of contracts, working with the agency. So we have a person who we call our Emergency Operations Chief Contracting Officer. And so she will coordinate with the person who is our lead at the EOC, and agencies will identify their needs, and then she will coordinate with within the agency how we can meet those needs, whether a contracting officer who handles that agency can normally do it, whether we need to do a new contract, whether we can look at existing contracts. And so that's basically how we do it.
And what communication do you have with DPW or other agencies like DCPS and DGS while managing snow removal contracts?
For us, we had regular daily, hour by hour communication with DPW. I think the DCPS, in terms of clearing the facilities and things, that's more of a responsibility that is not under OCP.
Okay.
But if there were a need that came into the EOC and people wanted us to do contracts, we could have done them, but we were mainly working with DPW and DDOT on the snow clearing.
And the latter would be because, or the other contract, the other agencies not working with you as closely would be because they had a finite responsibility in terms of snow clearing and already had staff or contracts?
They may have already had staff. They may have been getting some support from DGS as well,
Okay,
because DGS was handling the clearing around facilities.
right. Any specific issues that have occurred while managing any of the snow contracts?
Well, I think that when you have an emergency situation, it's like this, it was an incredible need. And so I know that we had to engage a lot of contractors that we didn't normally have contracts with, and the contract amounts were much higher than what we might have even predicted for a regular snowstorm, because it was the snowcrete and it was really very time consuming to remove it. So I think that was the challenge.
But there wasn't anything administratively that was problematic or that came up that needs to be
No, I
tweaked or
think we
changed?
were able to address the needs.
Anything you would highlight as going very well or poorly during the snow emergency that we could improve upon or replicate?
Well, I think for us, we've been using this model now for a few years for emergencies, but having our one lead person from the Business Resources Center who's at the EOC and leads that, and then we have our emergency operation contracting officer. It just, the coordination is there. We also use the purchase card a lot to pay for things so that we don't have to get, I guess, basically bogged down in paperwork. We have that record still through the purchase card, but we are able to immediately engage contractors. So I think we've got a basic operational model that works well for us in emergencies right now.
Okay. Anything else you want to add today?
No, nothing. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your testimony. This concludes today's budget hearing. If you have not yet submitted written testimony, please do so by submitting it on the council's hearing management system. The record for this hearing will close at 5:30 p.m. on May 8th, 2026. The time is now 11:41 a.m. and this hearing is adjourned.